Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online, news that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Anthony Moreno. According to the New Mexico Department of Health, in 2022, hospitals in the state reported over 2,000 emergency department visits related to suicide attempts. The health department also reported over 18,000 emergency department visits related to suicide ideation that year. We now learn more about efforts underway in Las Cruces to prevent suicide. Joining us are members of the Las Cruces Suicide Prevention Task Force. Please welcome Jessica Garcia and Kaylee Martinez. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Well, I want to start off just learning a little bit about the mission of your organization. Can you share that?
Yeah, so the mission is pretty simple. It's basically just to prevent suicides in our community, but it really expands beyond that. Really talking about doing a lot more community outreach, reducing the stigma around mental health and suicide, as well as substance use and recovery in our community.
What really brought you into this line of work?
So my entire life, I've dealt with anxiety, panic attacks, and also depression, starting as young as middle school, high school age. And being raised in a predominantly Mexican traditional household, we don't talk about mental health a lot. So it was very hard growing up, struggling, being in a crisis, not really understanding what was going on in my life. So now that I'm older and I've been able to learn through that experience, I want to share that with other people, and living in a predominantly Latino community, wanting to share that experience with my fellow Latinos as well.
Kaylee, what about you? Same question.
Yeah, I think I can relate to Jessica on that. The same kind of concerns is growing up, I struggled with suicidal ideations often, and I have a couple family members that have actually died by suicide. So it was a big mission for me to kind of be on the task force and kind of share what helped me and cope through kind of some of these areas, along with, having that support around me even almost weekly, daily, with the individuals that I work with, that, it's a safe space to be able to connect with.
Having that safe space, how important is that these days?
It's so important. I think we struggle feeling that judgment, even often, even as an adult, even now, even though I have these safe spaces, it still feels like, sometimes those intrusive thoughts get the best of you, and you really struggle of wondering what people truly wonder about you, and so they can take over.
Jessica, you mentioned just the stigma associated with the culture about being able to talk about mental health. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit more about that and some things that you've noticed as you became more educated about this issue? Yeah,
so there's a lot of factors that play into it. Growing up, in Mexican tradition, it's kind of talked about when you don't talk about those things because those are bad things. You don't want to bring those omens into the home, or if you talk about those things, people are going to think that you're troubled or something's wrong with you, especially if God forbid you mention you're going to go to therapy or something. They're going to be like, oh no, she's crazy. And really that's not the reality of it. When we talk about stigma, it's trying to put down those and realize that we need to bring the subject up to light. And we're starting to notice that the more stigma we reduce, the more that people are coming forward about their struggles, about asking for help and seeking out those resources in their community.
Kaylee, just talking about mental health today, do you feel the stigma is being lifted? And can you share with us some examples of how you see that happening?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's our goal, right, is to definitely lift it. And I facilitate the Survivors of Suicide group, so I think that's another great way we have that conversation, is to be able to express what our families have dealt with, generationally, and kind of bring that topic to light, so that way we can share. I think often, it's okay to not be okay, but also to share it with other people and let them know where you stand in that spot.
Jessica, do you think this is sort of a generational thing too, when we discuss mental health and the ability to bring it up in public?
I think it can be. I think our generation, the younger generation, starting to be more open about what perhaps the generation before them sort of taught them. But that's also part of our community outreach as well, is we're not just educating the newer generation, we're educating the previous generations as well, trying to change those attitudes around mental health. A big thing is, when we talk about it, family support is a huge protective factor with our younger generation. So by talking to grandparents, to parents, aunts, uncles, teachers, school admins, teaching them and changing their mindset around mental health, we're already protecting our younger generation into providing, again, those safer spaces and resources for them.
Let's dive into that education factor a little bit. Can you share with us some of the things you're doing to really provide that information and resources to folks in our community?
Yeah.
You work in outreach, so.
I think it kind of just depends. I think we do it monthly. One of our members goes out to the farmers market monthly and kind of talks about our suicide prevention task force. We also do it annually with the recovery month. So anybody who is in recovery, so whether it be within suicide, with substance use, we have that space we can hold so we can celebrate them and show that, we are in recovery and we can make it through this, and we're glad that you're here to be able to do this.
Is it tough to really make that connection with folks when you're doing the outreach? I mean, what are some things that you find seem to work where you can get people to approach you and ask for information?
I think Jessica hit the nail on the head, where there is stigma around it, where people don't want to talk about it, and we feel like there's, hate using this word, that there's crazy people out there, as far as, whoever brings it up. And I think that's what we're definitely trying to break down.
Well, you bring up just how we talk about mental health, mentioning things where people do say certain words that, may paint a certain light on mental health. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about that and how we can be more mindful about just talking about mental health?
Yeah, so we generally talk about something called first person centered language, and really that means, I'm going to give it an example, somebody who has diabetes, typically we're kind of used to saying, oh, they're a diabetic, and that's kind of putting the person as, well, their characters, their diagnosis, and that's not true. So we typically see this similar in mental health scenarios. Let's say, for example, somebody living with schizophrenia, the community has a tendency to say, oh, schizo or schizophrenic, again, putting that diagnosis in front of that person, when in reality, we have to put, just say they're a person living with schizophrenia or living with the diagnosis. So again, always remembering that behind everything, there is a human being. Mm-hmm.
You work in outreach, that's kind of what you do on a daily basis. Can you kind of give me an understanding of just, how you see outreach really working with folks who want to get help, or perhaps want to get assistance on how they can approach somebody who may need help?
Definitely, yeah. So I work at Peak Behavioral Health. It's a psychiatric hospital, one of many here, or one of a couple here in southern New Mexico. And I think meeting people exactly where they're at, tabling events, doing outreach, people always pass by my table and, I don't need that. But I always explain, maybe our friends do, our families do. So just meeting them exactly where they're at. And sometimes we feel like it may not be us, but we may know somebody that is struggling in some way, shape, or form with their mental health.
So what other sort of outreach methods do you all use to really get the education out there?
Something else that the task force also does on a monthly basis is host virtual QPR trainings, and that stands for question, persuade, and refer. So the basis of this training is and it's really done in about an hour and a half. The basis of the training is to introduce signs and symptoms of suicidal ideation, how to recognize them, once you do recognize them, how to approach somebody and ask them if they are thinking about suicide, and the different steps that they can take if that person responds yes or starts showing signs that they are, and from there how they can refer them to services. And
what is the appropriate method? Some folks may be concerned about how to even approach a person. Is that okay to do that? Do you know? Yeah. I mean, what does research and what does your work tell us?
So there's this misconception that if you ask somebody if they're thinking about suicide, that you're gonna plant this seed in their head and like, oh, you just gave them the idea and now they're gonna do it. That's not, the reality is if somebody's thinking about it, they're already thinking about it. As a matter of fact, there's a story about, somebody who jumped off of I believe it was the Golden Gate Bridge, and he said, if somebody had just asked me, I wouldn't have done it. If somebody had just approached me, and stories have said when somebody asked me, it feels like this weight was lifted and I finally let everything out that was bothering me.
Is there kind of a stereotype around the person who may be thinking about taking their own life? I think a lot of times, maybe we think of somebody who's super depressed or things like that, but sometimes it might be that person who the last person you would think to do this.
I think even if we look back and, I use a lot of well-known people like Robin Williams, thank you, I'm sorry. Super happy all the time. The majority of the movies that he played in was a very character-like individual, and he died by suicide. And I think that just gives a good stigma of shows how much that we can hold up a certain character to show that, maybe we're not dealing with it.
Yeah, I just, I'm sure we, through the work you do and throughout many of our lives, we may know somebody who has taken their own life, and for some people it may be the last person they thought would do that, and somebody who's very social. So it's interesting to learn more about how we can prevent this type of things from happening. I know New Mexico obviously has a real challenge with this issue. Can you kind of talk with us a little bit just about how big this issue is in our community?
I would say one of the things we struggle with so much in New Mexico is because we have so many rural communities. One of the struggles that I've seen, through this work is the lack of resources. How far does somebody have to travel to see a therapist, to maybe perhaps get services like at Peak Behavioral? We have our communities like Hatch, New Mexico. How far do they have to drive? There's a border checkpoint in the way for people to receive services. Are people going up there to provide services? But fortunately, we have something like the 988 hotline that has sort of been able to deviate some of those barriers for us, because it really is just a phone call away. It's not a long number to remember, and it's available as long as somebody has a cell phone.
You bring up the 988 number. Can you share with us, from what you know so far with the data, is it really making an impact?
As far as I know, I was able to go with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to do some policy work in DC over the summer, and it is making a huge impact. In the 2 years that it's been established, it's making a significant impact for exactly what Jessica said. In our rural areas that are not able to, or that don't have those services, it's a 3-digit number that you can call or text, and they answer in a matter of seconds to support you in whatever capacity they have.
The Las Cruces Suicide Prevention Task Force is supporting some recovery events that are happening in our community. Can you kind of give us some information on what we should expect? And this is, I believe, happening in the month of September.
It is, yeah. So I know we're doing it. September 21st is going to be our Recovery Day event at Young Park, 10 to 2, I believe. We'll be having hamburgers and hot dogs, yoga. We'll have people tabling the event. Just a safe space, like we talked about, to be able to kind of share whatever you're going through, or show that we're there to support you in whatever capacity that there is.
That's happening on a Saturday, I believe?
Yes.
Correct. Young Park on September 21st?
Yes.
Okay. And what other events does the task force and organizations in our region have planned to really get the outreach and education out there?
Something that we've done, I believe, 2 of so far, is we have been doing film nights where we have shown both at the Rio Grande and at the DACC East Mesa campus a film called Ascension, which is basically a personal story about suicide, and having an attendance of that, and also having a conversation afterwards after the film, and how much conversation has come out of that because of that film. And that's something that we will continue sharing. And also, I've already gotten asked by other counties if we can share it with them.
Peer support, let's talk about that a little bit. You brought up SOS, the group. Can you share with us a little bit about that and the goals of that?
Definitely, yeah. So Survivors of Suicide SOS group is to support individuals who have lost loved ones, who have died by suicide. It's just to give them a safe space and a capacity to really grieve that process with a group of individuals that are, in the same kind of circumstances, unfortunately. And they hang out for 8 weeks, lack of better terms, and really discuss their loved one and find ways to and share ideas with each other on how that looks to overcome such a difficult battle.
Having peer support and somebody to really be there with you as you navigate these challenges, how important is that? Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about what's really available in that space?
I think the importance of just peer support is being able to speak with somebody who has a lived experience, knowing that sort of like that's their credibility, they've lived through it, they know what it's like, and they can give somebody else that support that maybe they needed or they didn't receive, but they kind of are not offering it to somebody else. We've seen an increase in New Mexico of certified peer support workers, which are people who have lived experiences and they want to continue helping their community. And it's really helped bridge the gap because we're still missing mental health providers and therapists. They're sort of able to step in as the support system.
You just brought up infrastructure needs, just having the providers available, affordable quality care, and just the physical barriers and that may be in the way of people getting access to care. Can you kind of share with us some of the challenges that we're facing in our region with this issue?
Yeah, I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit. Being having so many rural areas, I've had the opportunity to travel all over southern New Mexico, and the basic or some of the only places that they can turn to is emergency rooms, and the emergency rooms are overcapacitated with different individuals in different areas and trying to support them on any given cause. So I think just the lack of support in many different capacities.
But we only have a minute left, but can you kind of share with us a little bit more about the goals of the Prevention Task Force and in Las Cruces, and what are some of those goals that you have in the immediate future?
Go ahead.
I guess we're starting off small, but we're really trying to grow the work that we're doing, and hopefully growing that education to spill into other communities. Really, again, our goal is to reduce the stigma, reduce suicide in our community, and to really just turn the conversation of mental health into something that shouldn't be scary and should be as open as any other conversation we have.
Okay, Jessica Garcia and Kaylee Martinez with the Las Cruces Suicide Prevention Task Force, thank you so much for joining us on Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Moving on, one organization in the borderland is working to empower professionals through networking events, aiming to showcase our region as a place to live, work, and play. Scott Brocato has more on this in Focus.
Hello, I'm Scott Brocato, and welcome to In Focus. Our guests are from Progress 321, Executive Director Maya Sanchez and Board President Gabe Gonzalez. According to their mission statement, Progress 321 brings together emerging leaders with established trailblazers and foster meaningful, actionable progress in our region. Maya Sanchez, Gabe Gonzalez, thanks for joining us on In Focus. Well, Maya, let's start with you. Expand upon that mission statement and tell us more about Progress 321.
Of course. Well, thank you, Scott, for having us today. Progress 321 was started officially as a nonprofit in 2015, but the genesis was much earlier. It consisted of a group of young professionals who were tired of a negative stigma that our region has, that in order to have a thriving career and a full life, you needed to leave the area. They had established themselves here, their businesses, their family lives were thriving, and they said, you know what, I bet there's other like-minded people like us. Let's do something about that to help encourage and grow that forward thinking and forward progress. Thus, Progress 321 was born.
And what were some of the negative stigmas, as you put it, Gabe?
So the most common one is there's a brain drain within our region. And so what we were trying to achieve was really showcasing that we have a lot of great talent. We have a lot of great industry opportunities within our region that can be overcome. We just need to present it to our like-minded individuals as such.
And what kind of people are on your board? You're the board president. It's a variety of different jobs and careers, aren't they?
Correct. Our board is made up of volunteers that assist within our operations of the organization. So we have members from all different industries, including banking, marketing sectors. We have myself, I'm a construction professional, a variety of different sectors and industries within our region.
Well, Maya, let's talk about a couple events coming up in September. El Paso Everywhere and One Region, One Table. What is the purpose, first of all, of El Paso Everywhere, and when will that be taking place?
El Paso Everywhere is an annual initiative. These are two of our largest strategic initiatives we have annually. And this year, El Paso Everywhere is taking place September 12th through the 15th. And what it is we're inviting expats, so people who were from here originally but have chosen to leave. We invite them to come back to see the progress that has been made in our region. And so last year and this year, we've had specific targeted areas of industry. Last year we focused on aerospace, and this year it'll and quality of life, and this year it will be on healthcare and education.
Which starts in El Paso on the first day, correct?
Correct.
And we'll end up
Thursday
in Las Cruces.
Yeah, on Thursday the 12th, we'll be visiting different health institutions as well as educational institutions in El Paso. We have the Medical Center of the Americas, Texas Tech, UMC, all within El Paso, and then in the afternoon we're coming into Las Cruces to tour the Burrell School of Osteopathic Medicine. And then we're also going to be hosting panels in which we'll have representatives from NMSU and the Arrowhead Center represented as well. And then in the evening we'll top it off with a dinner in Mesilla.
Can't beat the at La Posta.
Correct.
That's correct.
And day two will be in Ciudad Juarez?
That's correct. We'll be going across the border. That's going to be a very long day. We're taking a shuttle over there. We're going to invite our expats as well as our daily attendees to go visit a few of our institutions across the border, including FEMAP, CETA, and then we're also going to be visiting one of the maquiladoras to really focus on the biomedical technology developments that we have in that part of the region.
And finally, we move on to day three for the One Region, One Table event in downtown El Paso. Maya, that sounds exciting.
That's correct, yes.
Bring your appetite.
Yes, so El Paso Everywhere, a purchase of that ticket includes the dinner to One Region, One Table. However, we are also selling tickets which start this Monday to the dinner locally. We also have sponsorships available, and those are very, very popular as well. And so this year, we're excited to present one long table of 450 of our closest friends. And it's going to be an 8-course meal, and it's curated by 12 different chefs, and it'll all have wine pairings to go along with. We also have a tasting bar. We have a silent auction. There's a lot of other amenities that will be at the dinner. As well, of course, it wouldn't be a party without a live band and dancing as well.
And finally, we move on to the final day. That will be a brunch and tour at Dead Beach Brewery. That's
Correct.
in El Paso?
Yes, Dead Beach is in downtown El Paso. It gives our expats an opportunity to provide feedback, what their experiences were over the course of the event, what they got out of it. You know, we also are interested in making it better year after year. So we also would like some of their critiques on how they think we can improve the programming. The whole idea behind El Paso Everywhere and inviting expats back is to really focus on those expats who either have a hand in making decisions in their company or actually even just run their own companies. If they have an opportunity to scale up their business or they're talking about headquartering, we want them to consider home as an option.
And Gabe, where can folks find out more about both Progress 321 and to purchase tickets for these events?
So we have two primary websites for these initiatives. One is going to be elpasoeverywhere.com. The second one is going to be oneregiononetable.com. Both of these are events that are presented by Progress 321 as an organization, but because of the popularity, we decided to launch individual websites to track the registration process there.
All right, Maya Sanchez, Gabe Gonzalez from Progress 321, thank you for joining us on In Focus.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for another episode of In Focus. I'm Scott Mercado.
Thank you for joining us this week. As we close the program, we want to remind you that KRWG Public Media is asking you to share your questions that you have for candidates running in New Mexico elections this year. You can submit your questions at our website, krwg.org. Your thoughts and questions can help drive our election coverage this fall. I'm Anthony Moreno. Thank you for joining us for Newsmakers. We'll see you next time.